Evening, everyone. Hello. Hope having a good weekend and battened down from Storm Claudia. But yeah, different storm we're talking about now, isn't it? Different storm, different political storm. So I'm going to. Where to begin? I've been reading some of the comments as we're waiting to go live. Where to begin? There are any number of threads that you've been pushing in here that I could begin with. I mean, I've put on the thumbnail, is Badenoch going to outlast Starmer? I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? Even just a few weeks ago, you would have said, well, who's going to be the first casualty of this parliament? Kemi Badenoch. Of course it's going to be Kemi Badenoch. Might not be now. And I'll tell you for why. Let's just go over this. I mean, first of all, what I will say, just in terms of like what I think about this whole thing, Chris has just said their thing to be asking is if Starmer stays as Labour leader with the current advisors, they're basically handing the keys to number 10 to Nigel Farage in 2029. Either the advisors goes or he goes. So I'm not going to say that is definitely the case, by the way, but it is a huge risk. I am going to say if I were a Labour MP right now, if I were a Labour MP, I would be saying to Keir Starmer behind closed doors, because I'm not a shit stirrer like Clive Lewis, right? Behind closed doors, I would be saying to him, those advisors are serial cock-up merchants. They constant. It's not like they made one humongous cock-up like the winter fuel allowance type of thing, and they're still not recovered from it. No. They are constantly cocking up. Constantly. They are making error after error after error after error. And they made a huge error earlier this week. And then when it backfired, they made another huge error the following day. And then a couple of days later, they did it again, right? These people are never going to stop making a mess. They're never going to stop cocking things up. So what I would be saying if I were a Labour MP to Keir Starmer is every single thing that this Labour government is unpopular for is a direct result of senior people in number 10 Downing Street. Nowhere else. No cabinet ministers have cocked up. Like there's minor little things, nothing that would have caused this, nothing that would have caused them to lose ground to Reform UK. I would say to him, I cannot understand why Keir Starmer, for me, has set very, very, very high standards for his government, and he's been very ruthless in pursuing those high standards, incredibly ruthless. Why isn't he holding those advisors to the same high standards, and why isn't he being ruthless when it's quite clear that they are serial cock-up merchants? So I would be saying to him, my long-winded thing is this, I would be saying to him, I would do it, if I were a Labour MP, I would do everything in my power to get rid of those advisors. And I would say to him, if I'm quite happy for him to have a clear out, because there's a lot of problems if you get rid of your leader. I'm going to go through them in this stream. Don't let me forget, because there are things people need to be aware of. If you get rid of Starmer, it doesn't matter. Even if you get rid of him for someone better, there's shit that's going to hit the fan that you'd rather not. But I would say, if he will not get rid of those advisors, basically I would say if I were a Labour MP, if the only way to get rid of those advisors is to get rid of him and then demand that the replacement doesn't keep those people on, that's what I would do. At this point, if I were a Labour MP, I would be putting my support, at the moment behind closed doors, but I'd be putting my support behind a confidence vote if he will not get rid of those advisors, because they're wrecking Labour, utterly wrecking them. And it's everything. It's the poor communication. It's the failure to poll people properly. They shouldn't be coming out with unpopular policies. They shouldn't be. There's no excuse for it, right? They shouldn't have been happy to coast 7 points behind. I mean, 7 points behind Reform UK, that's not even the worst it's been. Utterly ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. But here's the thing, in terms of, right, will it be who goes first, Badenoch or Starmer? Because at this point, honestly, I'm going to point one thing out, actually, before I say the next. I was going to say I can't see Starmer surviving here. I am going to point one thing out. During Rishi Sunak's time as Conservative leader and Prime Minister, there was a real period of time of about 6 months, I think it was, about, from memory, where it was all mostly around that Rwanda scheme thing. There was a real period where the Tory press, so the ones who are not trying to the Tory party up. They weren't trying to trip them up, but they were reporting that Sunak was basically... There was this period of quite a few months where we were constantly being told that the number of letters was very close, very close, very close, very close, right? Do you remember? Later on, we found it was nowhere near close. It was just bullshit, right? Now, whether those journalists were publishing that just because, do you know what? It's spicy, scandal and political intrigue sells more, articles, however you're selling them, papers or whatever, than just, things are sort of all right. That doesn't sell anything at all. So were these journalists deliberately embellishing the threat to Sunak, or were they just being deceived by the MPs they were talking to? We don't know. What we do know is they were dead wrong. So I'm not saying, by the way, there may be no problem for Starmer and he might still be here in 5 years' time. I really can't see it at this point. What I'm saying is I cannot tell. I don't know any Labour MPs or indeed any MPs well enough to talk candidly about this sort of thing off the record. I don't know anyone. And so all I get is what's reported. But I also know that what's reported could be hideously off the mark. But it does seem incredible. And I'll tell you something else. So bringing Badenoch into it before I go through some comments here. There's a very different calculation for the Conservatives and Labour, right? So big event, spring next year, huge event, right? You've got local elections. They should always be taken seriously, right? But you've also got Senate elections, Holyrood elections. You've got 2 national parliamentary elections plus local elections, right? Labour and the Conservatives are currently looking like they're going to be on for a hiding next spring, okay? Now, the Conservatives, let us imagine that the Conservatives have decided that Kemi Badenoch needs to go, right? It wouldn't make sense to get rid of her just yet. You would wait until after those elections and then let her carry the can for that. Then I would suggest get someone else in, give them the best part of a year to get ready for the following year's local elections, right? Don't get a leader. And the reason I say that is if the Tories were to replace Badenoch now, and they can now, I mean, the fact that those letters haven't gone in yet suggests that they don't think it's a good time. The reason for that is if you get rid of Badenoch for someone else, the Tories won't get much of a bounce out of it. Because that's sometimes what can happen. You can get a bit of a bounce, you won't. Or I don't think you will. And I think the reason for that is, I think Badenoch has been disastrous for the Tories, but she's not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem is their legacy from their last period of government. And it doesn't matter who they get, that's not going to change. So I don't think changing their leader is going to make the difference for next year's elections. So they may as well let her carry the can for it rather than get someone else in and then have them have to begin their leadership making excuses, right? Give them a good bit of time before there's another election. Whereas for Labour, I think it's the opposite. I think Labour's biggest problem at the moment is their legacy is, well, they haven't got a legacy yet, but what they're doing at the moment is popular, but people don't know they're doing it. So I would actually say if, it's a big if, because they can really go wrong. If Labour were to get in a leader quickly before next year's spring elections, who can tell a more positive story about what they're doing. They don't have to invent a new manifesto. They just have to tell the public what they're doing right now. If you can get someone who can tell a more positive story, Labour could actually get a bounce in those elections, and those elections are important. In fact, there's something else to throw into the mix as well. Another reason why, if Labour are going to do this, they'd be advised to do it quickly. And I know I've said very recently, there's no point in doing it now. If you're going to get rid of Starmer, get rid of him in like 2028 or something. But if trust has broken down now, then there's no point in limping on a bit more. Basically what I'm saying is, in theory, yes, keep some stability, get rid of him in 2028. But if they're not going to do that, if they're going to get rid of him at some point next year, just do it now. Just do it. Go to him, say to him, either you sack Glasman and McSweeney, or we will sack them by sacking you. Just do that. Do it, and do it behind closed doors. None of this briefing in the media bollocks. But, get it done now. And the reason I'll say that, 2 reasons. First of all, like I said, if they can get someone in who can tell a positive story, they can actually get themselves a little bounce, right? And that could make a big difference. Secondly, some of the people who fancy their chances of replacing Starmer will know if they wait too long, they'll have Andy Burnham to contend with, right? Andy Burnham could not stand for the leadership if Starmer's ousted in the next month or 2. But everyone reckons he's looking for a way into, and there is a way, by the way, via Oldham. He can get back into Parliament for next summer. Unless Starmer blocks him, but that would be another cock-up, which I wouldn't put past them. So I actually think the calculations are different for Labour and the Conservatives. For the Conservatives, even if right now they think Badenoch should go, probably best hold on until after the elections because no one's going to rescue those. For Labour, I would say it is possible, not to rescue those elections so that Labour do stunningly well, but to massively limit the damage. I'm not saying it will happen, but I am saying it is possible. But there it is. If Greens beat Labour in the Senate, Starmer's done for. I don't think that's likely. Let me have a quick look at the latest opinion polls, shall we? Where are we? No, the Greens. What I will say is this. If the Greens do beat Labour in the Senate, then yes, Starmer would be done for. Because that shouldn't happen. Because in Wales, they don't need the Green Party, right? If you want to sort of vote left and you don't want to vote Labour, you've got Plaid. Plaid are the obvious ones to go for. Plaid Cymru are basically like nationalist Labour. They're just Labour that don't want to be part of the UK. They're very, very, I'm not saying absolutely identical, but they're very, very similar. There's a reason why they get on so well in the Welsh Parliament. There's a lot of overlap in stuff they try and do and the way they try and do it. But, I honestly, I cannot understand it. It's very, very, people have said that Starmer's ruthless, but it's very evident, isn't it? He has been utterly ruthless. Sometimes too much, sometimes, recklessly so, I would say. So why isn't he with his own team? Now, my speculation on this one, my pure speculation is, I just think, I'll say 2 things. First of all, so Starmer hired those people, or allowed them to be hired. Hired McSweeney. McSweeney seems to have brought the others on board. So Starmer's allowed that to happen, right? So he has exercised poor judgment. Now, okay, anyone can do that. Anyone can make a mistake. But he's persisted with that error of judgment for too long, for far too long. So then you'd say to yourself, so let's say MPs, McSweeney's blackmailing, that's why. I actually don't think it is. I think it's simpler than that. I think because I'll be honest, right? I think Starmer is Mr. Squeaky Clean. I don't believe he's ever done anything in his life, right? No. Well, the naughtiest thing he's done was selling ice creams without a permit in France that time on holiday, a lot when he was a young man. I honestly don't. He's too straight-laced. He's the straight-laced lawyer. I don't believe anyone's got anything on him. The Tory press tried. What would McSweeney have on him that the Tory press have? They've tried. Look how much they have dug. They've dug and they've found really very minor things about Louise Haigh, about Angela Rayner, about Rachel Reeves. Those are not the sort of things that just cropped up. And there was a few others as well, but those were like cabinet ministers. The amount of digging they've done, and they have been attempting to dig stuff up on Starmer for years. Remember the donkey field? That was their first attempt. I would suggest if there's any skeletons in Starmer's closet, the Tory press would have found it by now because, they've been on a real mission. They have found really obscure things that nobody would have, told them about. the stuff that they had to they have gone digging through everything. They've been basically going through bins, I think. So they've found nothing on Starmer. So I don't think anyone's got anything on Starmer. I think it's simpler. I just think, put it this way. Let us just imagine that Starmer has finally realised that McSweeney is no good and maybe some of his own appointments are no good and he has to get rid of them. Well, it's not as simple as getting rid of them, is it? I mean, he can sack them, but who does he replace them with? Who does he replace them with? Who? Like, if you recognise that your judgment has been poor, well, you haven't magically developed good judgment. How do you get someone different? I think it's a Lady Macbeth thing. Is halfway across the river, and it's like it's as, from his point of view, he's thinking it's as easy to carry on going in the wrong direction as it is to go back now. So there we go. John there saying, my local Labour Party put an 8-page document through people's doors around here listing all of National Labour's successes. Did anyone else get that? Well, this is the thing though, isn't it? It's like, there are lots of things they could boast about. And there are ways for them to be able to do it that would get it in the papers. Because we know the media will not volunteer to promote them to the public. We know that. But they don't have, they could easily make it, get a battle bus. Graham Hughes came up with that sort of idea. Get a battle bus. It's every time, like the Renters' Rights Bill is now the Renters' Rights Act, right? They should have a battle bus going around the country promoting it. Then when the Workers' Rights, the Employment Rights Bill becomes law, do the same thing again. Like, they should constantly have a battle bus going around the country publicising what the... And if the media complain, how much is this costing, right? Starmer should say to them, well, if you did your jobs be a bit combative. If you did your jobs properly and told the public about this, we wouldn't have to. But you don't seem to want to do your jobs properly, so we're going around the public telling them what we're doing, right? Because you can't be asked. I would say that. Have some bloody, fire and fury. Have a bit of fire and fury to you. I reckon Rayner would be better at conveying a more positive message. Who else would be good at this particular trait? Right, interesting you should say that. Let's have a look at the runners and riders, shall we? So these are some of the names that have been cropping up, right? The ones at the top are the credible ones. The ones on the bottom I don't think are that I mean, who knows, though? Who thought that John Major would replace Margaret Thatcher, right? You never know. But nonetheless, this is how I've picked it, right? So on the top, the credible options to replace Starmer would be Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham, Shabana Mahmood, Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband. On the bottom, you've got Lucy Powell, Darren Jones, John Healey. I've only put John Healey in because I've seen his name crop up a few times. I really have no idea why. He's got no public personality. You wouldn't pick him. You wouldn't pick. But I wouldn't pick any of the bottom three. I'm not saying that none of them would work, but I don't think any of them would work. Like, because what you want to do, right, if you're going to say the problem's the advisors and the fact that we had a prime minister who doesn't have enough political chops to manage that. Because if Keir Starmer was a better politician, if he had better political instincts, then his advisors couldn't have steered him this badly wrong. Because he would, like, a decent politician, when it was like, oh yeah, winter fuel allowance, they would have gone, hang on a minute, that sounds a bit risky to me. Have you done the homework on this? Can I see the results? At which point they'd have gone, oh, we just sort of think it'll be all right. At which point you would go, no, I want you to do the research, please. Same with all that debacle over the PIP thing. Now the disability cuts, right? There was actually logic to that. We might not like it, but there was actually logic to it. There was no logic to letting it get as far as it did when it was quite clear Labour MPs weren't going to have it, right? So again, someone with better political acumen would have gone, MPs won't wear it, mate. We're not going to go ahead with this. So many things that... So what you want is not to pick another leader where you're hoping they get better advisors. You want to pick a leader that has actually got some political acumen. All of those 5 people on top have got political acumen. The ones on the bottom, Lucy Powell doesn't. She and Bridget Phillipson are basically cut from the same cloth. They were both competing with each other for deputy leadership. For my money, neither of them are good Neither of them got good political instincts. That's not to say they couldn't make a good leader if they had a strong team of advisors behind them, but we can't hope for that. Starmer didn't get good advisors. Why would they? Darren Jones, I just don't know yet. I'm not saying he's not a good politician. I just don't know. I haven't seen enough of him. John Healey, he's been around too long. If the amount of time he's been around to have not built up a really strong public image, I would just say no, don't bother. But I put him on there because, like, you know, people have put him on. But if we go along the list, pros and cons. These are my pros and cons here. 34 says Ed says he's done it once and that was enough. So he's already ruled himself out, has he? Okay, fair enough. Although you say that, but maybe depending on who else runs, he may do to protect, because not everyone. Right. Don't imagine that whoever replaces Starmer will basically do the same things but not be shit. Right? There's several things where there's friction within Labour. One thing that will go out straight away, I bet you, will be democratising the House of Lords, because that's Starmer's thing. None of the others will do that. Ed Miliband, of course, his environmental project. What if someone runs who might get rid of him and put someone in charge who doesn't go as hard as it? So Ed Miliband may have to run just to make sure that his work carries on. But if we go along with them anyway, can I point out that just because some people are feeling better off doesn't mean the rest of the country is feeling the same? No, it's quite obvious the rest of the country is not feeling better off. Again, I've said this often enough on the channel, and I'll keep saying it. And Labour, Starmer, to be fair, has said this himself, so he's not under any illusions. You need people to feel better off. It's no good whining at them and pointing at a graph and going, look, you know, the average incomes have gone up above the level of inflation. That means most of you are better off than you were a year ago. If people don't feel it, perception is everything in politics. Perception is everything. So yes, things are actually better than they were a year ago. And actually Labour's reforms have not even mostly taken effect yet. Things will be better in a few years' time, as long as they don't panic, right? But anyway, left to right, Wes Streeting, advantages, good media performer. A good and a bad thing is he's, for me, and I've said this for a long time, he's too divisive. He keeps picking fights, right? Like, look at the way he's been with the doctor strike. Now, I think the BMA are right out of order. I think they're out of order. They're striking after getting a 29% pay rise. It's fucking stupid, right? But he's unnecessarily combative with them. He's like making them out to be like the mafia, right? He's literally likening them to the mafia. He's not a diplomat. Do you know what I mean? He's not diplomatic. That's a bit of a problem for me, right? Basically, Wes Streeting, but there is a flip side to it as well, is that he might be very combative, with dodgy elements of the media. Maybe if he's the leader, he'll tell Tory Kunsberg where to go. Maybe he will actually have a pop at the media. Maybe he'll have a real good go at Reform UK and the Tories, and the Greens and anyone else that's challenging them. So it's flipped. It's, for me, it's a sort of double-edged sword. He's very good at that sort of combative behaviour, but he does it too much to his own side. It's too divisive. Basically, having Wes Streeting as leader would be a little bit like going into battle with the Americans. They're just as likely to shoot you as the enemy, right? Andy Burnham is a snake. You don't know what you get with Andy Burnham. There's various people think they're going to get this left-wing champion. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. We don't know. Andy Burnham, right, is really pro-EU now, but he said he's a Brexit. During the actual Brexit years, he said we should stay, you know, when we'd voted to leave, he says, if we have another referendum, I'll vote to stay, to carry on leaving still. He's a Brexiteer. He's a Blairite Brexiteer that's been championed by the hard left, would you believe? What the hell is that going on about? I mean, the Brexiteer side of it sort of appeals to some of them. But I will point out, although Corbyn was a Brexiteer, a lot of his cults weren't. You know, the Momentum leadership at the time, they weren't pro-Brexit at all. So, and the other thing is, right? These days you think, well, he's very pro-PR as well. He's very pro-electoral reform. Is he? Or is he just saying it? Because my issue with Andy Burnham is he says things, he seems to change his mind according to the political wind. He's basically Labour's version of Robert Jenrick, only he is at least competent. He has got that in his favour. He is at least administratively competent. He's proved that in Manchester. He's done well in Manchester. I'm not saying he'd be hopeless as Labour leader. He may not be. I just don't know what you're going to get with him. Not necessarily what he promises. Shabana Mahmood is politically canny. She's very solution orientated. I know people are not liking this idea of adopting some Danish immigration and asylum policies. But at the end of the day, what has she done? She's identified that a lot of the public wants something done about it, and she's doing some things about it, right? That's not going to... And also, what has she done, you know, in terms of the threats to our place in the ECHR? She said, well, let's just change the way we interpret it and try and change the ECHR as well to make sure people see the value in it. That's identifying a problem, identifying a solution and applying it. So that's the sort of thing we want. The downside to her, well, there's two downsides. There's one definite and one speculative. The definite downside is she is socially conservative. Keir Starmer is strategically socially conservative. He has allowed Blue Labour to dictate so much. We know from his life, we've got decades of examples of who Keir Starmer is from his life as a lawyer, right? So we know he himself has quite a lot of liberal leanings. His government doesn't. He thinks it's strategic. With Shabana Mahmood, you'd get someone who is ideologically tied to social conservatism. So we don't know what happens to various liberal rights, do we? The other possible downside, given the type of voter that Labour are wrangling over with Reform UK, is a female British Asian leader, and I don't even like to mention identity politics, but is a female British Asian leader going to work? Because I keep thinking to myself over last year's US presidential election, if they'd have got Gavin Newsom then, just basically a bog standard cardboard cutout white American bloke with flashy teeth, would the Democrats have won? You know, is it that Americans just will not pick a woman at the moment for president? Is that the problem? Now, we know that's not the problem here if they can look strong, because Margaret Thatcher won several elections in a row. But do you know what I mean? Next one, Angela Rayner. So she's demonstrated her administrative abilities. She's been very good at towing the party line. So from my point of view, you know, I have a real problem with MPs who try to become leaders after having undermined previous leaders. She hasn't done that. She's a team player. So that for me says, yep, that's leadership material. For me, again, it's snobbery. I think there might be too much snobbery in the country. And I know it looks like I'm coming up with excuses to rule out the women. I'm trying not to, but I've seen so many working class women who say they don't like Angela Rayner. And because they think she's just too in your face. But also, I just think Middle England are we have a lot of snobs in this country. And I just fear the Neil Kinnock effect. Do you know what I mean? Neil Kinnock said the problem was he was too Marmite. There were people that loved him, there were people that hated him. Whereas what he described John Major, who beat him, as marmalade. You know, like people were like, yeah, it's all right. Ed Miliband obviously has done it before and he cocked it up. Massively cocked it up. He got his strategy wrong. He himself was really crap in debates. And it was only 10 years ago. But in that 10 years, he's got much better. He's learnt a lot. My worry with Ed Miliband, because first of all, I think he's quite calming. He's a unifying figure. He's not divisive, but he can give needle. He's on top of his game. He's much better than he was 10 years ago. But is he good enough? My worry would be, and I did say this on Graham's stream, my worry would be, if you back Ed Miliband and he cocks up again, you're in half going to feel stupid because people will say, well, he cocked up first time. Why would you think he'd do any better this time? And it's because I think he's learned a lot. Like Ed Miliband to me doesn't have any, I sense no ego with Ed Miliband. He's a very humble man, and he doesn't look to he didn't look to blame others when he did mess up, didn't look to blame anyone else. And that's important. And the thing is, when you've got that attitude, it's not just that it's a good attitude. I'm not saying I support him because he's humble. What I'm saying is when you're humble, you are more likely to learn from your mistakes, because first of all, you acknowledge they're your mistakes. Whereas when you've got an ego, you're not. I mean, I always remember the point in my life, I can distinctly remember where, and it was quite late on, it's embarrassingly late on in my life, I have to say. I'd like to say I learned this lesson in my 20s. I absolutely did not. But I did learn a lesson at some point in my life that sometimes something shit happens to you and it's someone else's fault, right? So you naturally think, well, it's their fault, they should fix it. But they're not going to fix it because they don't give a shit, right? There's a point in my life where I thought to myself, if something's negatively affecting my life, it's a waste of time working out whose fault it is. Waste of time. Can I fix it? That's the only question you should ask yourself. If there's something in your life you're not happy with, ask yourself, can I fix it? Doesn't matter whose fault it is. Can I fix it? If the answer is yes, do it, because you are the one most motivated to fix it. And as soon as I came to that revelation in my life got a lot easier. I'd struggled with lots of things in my life up to that point. At that point, my life got way simpler, because as far as I was concerned, I would just try and fix anything. Sometimes you can't fix everything. Sometimes you do need someone else to fix it, and it is their fault. But sometimes you can just go, do you know what? I can fix it, so I will. You can still chunter about it, but So, and life becomes simpler because then you put the responsibility on yourself for your own life. You give yourself agency, at which point life gets a whole lot better. Anyway, right, catch up with some comments. Margaret Thatcher had a voice coach, so Raina might well be looking into that, but she won't, because the thing is, Raina, part of her appeal, first of all, you won't get rid of, she's built up a personality now, right? And it's very appealing to a certain group of people, right? The thing is, Angela Rayner is an asset to the Labour Party because she appeals to a particular group of people, but she does put off another group. Now, when you're the leader, that's a problem because that's dividing people. But if you're not, if you're just a senior member of the outfit, it's just an asset because you can use her to appeal to the target audience she appeals to, and you push someone else on the other audience, right? But when you're the leader, you have to have that ideally mass appeal. But if you can't have mass appeal, and Keir Starmer never from day one had mass appeal, at least mass not pissing anyone off. And that was the beauty of Keir Starmer. He was someone who evoked no strong emotions from anyone. He was an everyman. Great, fantastic. I just want to point something else out there. About Margaret Thatcher. I'll catch up some more comments, but I'm just want to do something a bit cheeky. If I can, oops, no, wrong one. What about Jonathan Reynolds? Right, so Jonathan Reynolds. First of all, I've not seen his name really bandied about, but so I did say I was impressed with Jonathan Reynolds over that weekend, legislators to take over British Steel in Scunthorpe. I have to say, but that issue with the LinkedIn CV thing, I think that's a bit fatal. So for those who don't know what happened, what happened was on a LinkedIn thing. I didn't see it before it was changed, right? But he was training to be a solicitor. He sort of worked at this solicitor's firm as like a trainee. but he never qualified. He went into politics. So there's a suggestion in the CV, which I didn't see, that it implied he was working there as a solicitor. Now, it could have just been the Tory media making a big deal of it. However, he was told officially by the solicitor's body, like their guild or whatever it's called, that if he did it again, they would take action. In other, because it's a protected term, solicitor. You can't just claim, like you can claim. There's various professions you can just say you're a thing, and there's no real. It's not really protected. Like you can say you're a journalist. It's not a protected term, but solicitor is. So even hinting that you're a solicitor can be, can be taken seriously. So I think Jonathan Reynolds, I think they'll bring it back and back and back and claim that he's fundamentally dishonest. I think that's just a problem. So McSweeney's wife's a Labour MP. She must be giving him feedback unless there are Labour MPs who think McSweeney et al. Are doing a great job. Well, there's two things there. First of all, some Labour MPs will probably be fine with him. Yeah, I'm not saying literally every Labour MP is saying it's time to go. Otherwise, he would be gone now, because they would just all go to the whip's office and say, we are all as one here. He goes or you both go. But the other thing is this. I mean, this is what's coming out of these reports, where they're describing it as a bunker mentality. I prefer the term fortress mentality, but it doesn't matter. It means the same thing. There's denialism. They're just in denial. They think that right, and here's the thing. So they're thinking to themselves that it's the Labour MPs who don't get it, because they're thinking to themselves, like I've been saying, there's a certain truth in this, that the stuff Labour are putting in place is really popular. It's really good. And when people see it, it'll be like, oh, yeah, oh, we didn't know you were doing this stuff. Oh, yeah, we'll vote for you. They think that's going to happen, right? And there's a certain extent to which I think to an extent that will happen. The problem is they keep cocking up. They're constantly cocking up. And they're therefore giving the media plenty of opportunity to not report on the positive stuff. Only so much of it will be visible. Some of it needs pointing out. So I just think there's now this schism, or I suspect, I can't know for certain, I suspect there's this schism between 10 Downing Street, who think that Labour MPs don't know what they're doing. And to be fair, like most of them are new to the job. Most Labour MPs actually are not politically astute, because some of, I mean, most of them have only just become MPs. Most of them have got no experience as MPs. But even the ones, and some of those will still not be dumb. Like Torsten Bell, for example, has only just become an MP, but he ran the Resolution Foundation before it. He knows politics. He's not a fool. And some of them be like that. But a lot of MPs, don't really know a lot about politics when they become MPs. They learn on the job. It's really weird. Thoughts of the 2016 president election be between two peeps who gave Bill Clinton head? No, I can't repeat that. Also, we don't like to talk about the 2016 presidential election because that caused a lot of problems everywhere, including here. 2016 was a very bad year for the United Kingdom. It was actually a stunningly bad year. In fact, future historians, I think, are going to look back and go, 2016, that was the year when it all went to shit. Rayner should stay true to herself. It's one of her big qualities. Knows where she came from, knows the system by having been part of it. Big advantage of the other charlatans in politics. You say that as if people reward honesty in politics. People don't reward honesty in politics. They punish it, right? But there you go. There's a reason why Powell, not Phillipson, is deputy leader. Yeah, because it came down to a choice between two women who are basically clones of each other. And one of them was seen as the Starmer pick and one of them was seen as the not Starmer pick. It's really that simple. That's what it came down to. And the same thing is likely to happen. Like when I talk about who's likely to replace him, I mean, he hasn't gone yet, but who's likely to replace him, it depends on what Labour MPs want. If Labour MPs have got any brains, they will want a coronation, not a leadership contest. A leadership contest will be ruinous for several reasons. First of all, straight away, if Starmer resigns, there's been a bit of a wobble in the old bond market. Have you noticed? Why? Because they were quite happy with the idea of income taxes going up. Now that they're not, the pound doesn't look quite so stable now. If Starmer resigns, they'll know that Reeves is going as well. The pound will tank. I'm not saying it'll be like Liz Truss days, but there will be a problem. So there will be a huge economic problem. There will also be, look at the moment, consumer confidence is lowish, because it's actually much better than it was this time last year, looking at my ad rates anyway. But it's still lowish, it's lower than it should be. And that is because of uncertainty over the budget. Well, if Starmer steps down, until a new leader is selected, you've got loads of uncertainty. And even when the new leader's selected, they've got to appoint a new chancellor. Well, there's going to be another budget, isn't there? Or are they going to say, we will stick to the same budget? We don't know. So you're going to have, from the second it looks like Starmer's going, until the new government is up and running, you are going to have instability, not just in the government, but in the country. Right? So if you can get rid of Starmer and replace him basically straight away within a couple of weeks, that's the tidiest way to do it. If you're going to have a leadership contest that goes on for even a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, you're going to leave yourself. We've already got a fragile economy. We can be doing without that. We can do without that. And then, of course, you've got the other problem, right? You've got the big problem, which is whoever takes over, what are they going to do? Do they stick to the manifesto or do they not? If they don't stick to the manifesto, they've got no public mandate. If they do stick to the manifesto, what are they doing different? Like, what are they going to say to the public? What are they going to say to the public? What are they going to do different? Because if you do anything different, then it's like, well, you haven't got a mandate. You have to call a general election, which they don't, of course, and they won't. But the media will push that. They'll say, in a way that they didn't with the Rwanda plan, for which there was no mandate, but they will with Labour. So that's what they will say. Are you going to deviate from the manifesto or not? If not, well, what was the point of replacing Starmer? And if you are, well, where's your mandate? You have to call an election. And the media will paint them as people running away from the public mandate, you know, ruling by fiat, executive fiat, as John Bercow once said to someone else, to Black Rod, actually. You know, there's so much shit. So if you're going to do it, as I say, it would be much tidier in 2028, because by then, if you're down, people sort of get it. Like 2028, most of the manifesto is done anyway. So you can then sort of as a party say, look, you know, Starmer's not working out for us. We're going to change him for someone else for the next election. And that's fine. That doesn't look chaotic. That just looks like you've got an eye on the next election. You basically, Starmer's done his work. He's done his work. You can get rid of him then. He's not working out. And the public will be fine with that. If you get rid of him now, you create massive amounts of uncertainty. And the longer that uncertainty goes on, the worse it is. But if it does go like this, here's what happens. If Labour MPs decide they want a coronation and they just want one candidate and they really work hard on that, it'll probably be Wes Streeting. If there's a leadership contest, it does depend who runs, and it depends when it is. If it's soon, Angela Rayner will probably be favourite, which is not necessarily a good thing, but it will be a thing. We don't know. I'm not saying Angela Rayner cannot win an election. I just have worries. But I do think she's politically astute, at least. All of the ones on the top are politically astute. So they're all, from that point of view, none of them are likely to make the cock-ups that have been made under Starmer. But they still need to get the right advisors in, right? A leader cannot do everything. They cannot be all wise. They do need advisors. But there it is. Ivan Ambrose said, I make no apology in saying that Starmer must stay. Well, ideally he would, and the advisors go. Every cock-up has come from number 10 Downing Street. And I don't just mean that number 10 Downing Street is responsible because the book stock's at the top, right? I mean because literally every mistake has come from that building. That house in London has literally been the source of every single cock-up, every single one. Apart, like in terms of the ones that have put Labour where they are. Obviously, Angela Rayner's thing was her fault, but that's a minor thing, right? That's nothing to make a big deal of. And no one would have made a big deal of it if Labour were more accomplished. Politicians may get away with not being honest, but lacking authenticity is fatal proven ratings. Yes, you have to appear authentic. Yes. You have to give the impression of being honest whilst actually being really conniving. That's why I say Andy Burnham would not necessarily be a terrible leader. You know, my calling him a snake, Andy the Adder Burnham, is in politics is not really an insult. It's actually it's something of a compliment. My worry is that I don't know what you're getting from him. If someone votes for Andy Burnham to be leader, I don't think you know what you're... I think people will think they know what they're getting, and I don't think they will. I don't think they will at all. But there are advantages to Burnham. There are advantages. One, he's conniving. You do actually need a political leader to be conniving. You just want them to be conniving in the public interest, not their own personal... We don't... My problem is he's the opposite of Ed Miliband. Andy Burnham has an ego, right? Andy Burnham has a very fragile ego, right? That's a problem. Another problem you've got is basically, if you're into... You'll notice I haven't mentioned personal policies apart from Shabana Mahmood for any of them. But I will say, if you're going to bring that in for others as well, Streeting and Burnham are Blairites. So you're going to get New Labour again with either of them. And I don't just mean because Wes Streeting wasn't around at the time, but he is a Blairite, right? If either of those become leader, you're going to get New Labour again. Like people keep thinking we have it now. We don't have it now. Starmer is not a New Labour person. If you look at what he's actually done, it's nothing like New Labour. It's completely the opposite in many respects. In fact, sometimes it's completely the opposite because New Labour were very socially progressive. They were just economically conservative. Whereas Starmer's government is economically, I wouldn't say radical, but I would say it's shifted very much to the left, but socially very conservative. Whereas Streeting and Burnham are both Blairites. And they still are, I think. But it is what it is. But yeah, but Burnham, the other advantage to Burnham maybe, I hate myself for saying it, but the other advantage is he's a complete outsider. So if he did come in and take over, he's not tainted by Starmer. All of the others have been in Starmer's cabinet and have had to back positions because they were told to, right? They're perfectly at liberty to change them now if they're leader, but they've nonetheless had to back certain positions which may have made them unpopular. Streeting, for example, is not at all popular amongst the trans community. You may have noticed. Even though that may be because he was told to. We don't know. We do know he was told to, by the way, but we don't know whether that's, you know, what his personal views on it are. Whereas Andy Burnham he's been free to be at odds with the government position because he's his own person, right? Up in Manchester, a mayor, just like Sadiq Khan in London. So he's been free to be different. So he's an outsider. That could be a positive. I just think it's very messy, him coming back. And also, because number 10 will sense that they will know that if Andy Burnham enters Parliament, that's it. Starmer's facing a confidence vote. Simple as that. I think it would be a very bad move to try and block him from standing as a candidate in a by-election. But at the same time, I wouldn't put it past them to do it, which will cause an almighty stink. There was a push to get rid of Attlee in 1947. It failed miserably. I think Attlee was a better politician, though. I mean, because he was, like, that government was radical. And because of it, obviously, it created a lot of anxiety. And remember, they did. At the next election, they basically lost. Someone will go, oh, no, technically they won. Okay, they won, but they didn't have a strong enough government and it fell a few months later, then they lost, right? So effectively, you can understand why Attlee faced a challenge because what his government did was transformational, but it was not appreciated in its time because they lost. And that's the fear here. That's, again, like, you know, when number 10 Downing Street, when the advisors in number 10 are trying to put a stop to the manoeuvres, the leadership manoeuvres, they're just showing that they don't understand politics. It's really simple, right? It's really simple. A prime minister is completely safe when they're leading in the polls. A prime minister is vulnerable when they're behind in the polls. It's that simple. It's that black and white. It's that simple. If you are behind in the polls, as Prime Minister, you are vulnerable. There will be talk about leadership challenges for every moment you are behind in the polls. If you don't like it, get yourself to the top of the polls again. Do you know what? If Labour went to the top of the polls next week, all this talk about getting rid of Starmer would disappear overnight. Because people will try and put it down to issues. They'll try to, it's down to this and it's down to that, and Starmer's no good at this and no good at that. There's one thing that matters in politics. Are you going to win the next election? That is the overriding virtue in politics. Are you going to win the next election? At the moment, the polls say no. So Starmer's vulnerable. One thing I brought up before is that Starmer has sacked McSweeney before when they lost Hartlepool. Well, moved him. I mean, he's sacked a few people. This is what I mean about the ruthlessness thing, though. Even though it looked like he was sort of blaming others instead of himself, yes, after Hartlepool, there were numerous changes. He was moved. It's just like they described Angela Rayner as being sacked, but she wasn't sacked. She was actually moved to a better position in the end, although there was argy-bargy to begin with. You know, so he moved people. And it worked. They suddenly started doing a lot better. I mean, that's the maddening thing about it. He was making the right calls right up until mid-2023. Right up until then. Burnham and Miliband should stay where they are. Ideally, yes. Ideally, they would stay where they are. I don't trust Andy Burnham. And Miliband he's probably the best qualified. He's the ideal Secretary of State because his brief is something that he personally really strongly believes in. He hasn't taken the job because it's a good job in politics. It's a senior position. He's taken it because that's his thing. He knows all about it. He's been doing it for years. He's good at it. He's committed to it. Yes, I think that is the best position for him. But if it looked like the leadership could be won by someone who, like, for example, we know Blue Labour are a bit cool on the old clean energy. Blue Labour are basically like left-wing Reform UK. They really are. They sound to me, the more I learn about them, for example, they didn't want they didn't want Starmer to go to COP30. Now, in a way, that's encouraging that he did, because that's like him showing that he's not doing everything they say. He's not doing everything they say. So that was a good vote of confidence there. We don't know that the next leader will be as committed. I don't know what any of those people think about it. Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham, Shabana Mahmood, Angela Rayner. I don't know what any of them think about the race for clean energy and green technology in this country. Are they believers in it? Because the thing is, it's not an easy thing. It's not a switch you flick. It's not a case of, right, we're going to invest in the green revolution and we're going to transfer a load. Like Keir Starmer announces 800,000 jobs are going to be created in it by 2030. But it's not as simple as announcing it and it's done. Some policies you can just say, can you do it? It's easy. Can you do this? Yeah, we can do this. Let's do it then. Right? Some things are not. You can have an aim, but it's not actually easy to achieve. Ed Miliband's job is one of the difficult ones. Basically, I've said before, the two really crucial departments are the energy, well, in his case, it's energy security and net zero to give its full title, but the energy department and the housing department. Those are the tough ones. They're really crucial to Labour's chances, but they're really difficult. Other ones, like the NHS, is obviously high priority, one of the top priorities, but despite the fact Wes Streeting has had a bit of criticism from the Institute for Government, who, by the way, are a good think tank, right? By the way, they are not biased. Nonetheless, it's relatively straightforward to improve the NHS, right? There are some difficulties with it as well, but it's, you know, you can certainly get the NHS firing much better by just being focused on a few key targets. Other key ones would be obviously the Treasury, but the Treasury, ironically, is one of those things where you can just basically say, I want to do this, let's do it, right? Now, the difficulty with the Treasury is, what is the effect on the economy? Like, so you don't trigger capital flight or anything like that. But nonetheless, the housing and energy are the two really tough gigs, the really difficult ones, where it's not enough to have a plan. Even the plan is difficult. It's like walking a tightrope. So I don't know if any of those potential leadership candidates, much less all of them, are fully on board with the green agenda. I don't know which ones are. Did Cameron face leadership speculation when Tories were behind Labour for ages? They weren't really behind Labour for ages, though. And the other thing is, the Conservatives, I know they went a bit wobbly in the last few years, but generally speaking, the Conservatives are very, very focused on election strategy. And David Cameron was never behind Ed Miliband in the polls, ever. The Tories were behind Labour sometimes. But David Cameron, on a head-to-head, was always above Ed Miliband. And the Tories were always ahead, I think, on the economy. In a situation like that, you know that when the opposition goes ahead of you, it's just because of dissatisfaction mid-term. Which is, again, why people shouldn't panic excessively about the polling now. It's just mid-term dissatisfaction, which is quite normal. The fundamentals are still there. Keir Starmer is still polling, I think, above Nigel Farage. But the gap has really closed down, so, you know. However, Labour are not polling ahead on the economy. So, Reform UK are ahead in voting intention and on the economy. That's a really bad sign. That was never the case for Cameron. He was always ahead on the economy. He was always ahead on the head-to-head. No panic. No need to panic. If it was the case that Starmer was personally ahead of Farage, Labour was still ahead on the economy, it wouldn't matter about the polling now. I mean, it's still not good to be 7 points behind, but it wouldn't be a disaster. But they're also behind on the economy, which is really bad. Starmer's strengths in foreign policy, meeting foreign governments. He has been very good at that. He would want to go to COP13 plays to his strength. Yes, he has been very good at that. That's another thing you risk by getting rid of him. We don't know if any of the others would get on well with Trump. Would they even try? I mean, because there's two ways to play Trump, right? You can either kiss his ass like Starmer's done. That's worked out well. And it's worked out well for Ukraine. We must remember it's not just about us. But I do get that every government has to mostly prioritise its own country. Or you can go the other way. You can go the Canada route. And you can actually make an adversary of Trump, right? And try and make a virtue of standing up to the orange bully. But both of them are risky. You can try kissing his ass and fail and be seen as weak. Because one thing that people who know Trump say is you've got to stand up to him in just the right way. You've got to, he takes things personally, so you mustn't do anything that he will take as a personal slight, but you also can't let him run, you know, walk all over you because he will. So you've got to get that balance right. Starmer's got that balance right. Next one might not, right? Same with the EU. Like, how many of these are committed Europhiles? I don't know that Angela Rayner is. I'm not sure exactly where she stands on that. Shabana Mahmood, I don't know where she stands on that. Wes Streeting, I think, is pro-EU. Andy Burnham, who knows? He says he is. But a few years ago, he said he wasn't. Would the real Andy Burnham please stand up? Mystery box. Mystery box. Rumpy feuding with MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I saw this one. Yeah, he's now saying he will support any suitable primary challenger to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Hilarious. She's Georgia, isn't she? Hilarious. as she desperately tries to reframe herself as a potential successor to Brian Kemp for Georgia. Yeah, Georgia, thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, as well, she's actually been strategic. She's been strategic. The public want the Epstein files released. The public want their healthcare protecting, right? She's actually been strategic on this. Even though she's an ideological nut job, she's been more strategic than Trump. I honestly, I know that Trump is going to be heavily implicated in the Epstein files. He would have been better just releasing them. And then when people tried to go, oh, what's this then? What's that then? Just gone, fake news. Everyone knows I broke up with him years ago. He should have just said that. He'd have been in a much better position. Now he's having to launch investigations into targeted people like Bill Clinton, which isn't going to do anything because Bill Clinton's is a blast from the past. He's a blast from the past. Just join what the W2F has happened now. Well, nothing specifically happened, I don't think. But I think we have to say that given that Keir Starmer has basically said that there's no... He's pretty much said he's not getting rid of McSweeney, at which point... That was the thing that would have given him time, because here's the thing now. The budget is going to be unpopular. It's going to be unpopular. Because it's going to hit some people. It really doesn't... they can try and protect... It's going to hit some people, right? And the problem is, it's not that... Right, in this country, people are actually happy to pay a bit more in taxes if it's for better public services. But there are two problems that Labour have right now, and there's no easy solution. The first is the cost of living means people are more like, but can't they pay more instead of me, right? The second problem is this. People have been persuaded that there's savings to be made in welfare and particularly with immigration and asylum. People have been persuaded that there's too many people getting too much money on welfare and that immigration and asylum is a drain on us. At which point, if you're asked to pay for something, like if you're asked to pay a bit extra to make the NHS better, people are up for that. People are up for that in this country. But they're being told, they say that it's for the NHS, but in reality, it's not. It's paying migrants, boat people, to sit on their arse all day and rape young women. That's what they're being told, right? So Labour have a huge problem. The budget's going to be unpopular. And they could take a hit. They could take a hit from that. And... that could trigger it. At the point at which Starmer needed to shore up support ahead of this budget, and I grant you it's not him, right? He has said he did not authorise those briefings. He said people have gone behind his back. Okay, sack him. You know who's behind it. McSweeney's behind it. There isn't a lone wolf in this. There isn't a lone wolf. And when Starmer said that briefing had not come from number 10, you know that's a lie. That's a definite lie. There's no way you could conclude that it didn't come from number 10 without knowing who it came from. And if he knows who it came from, he would have sacked him. He said so, right? He basically said that. Or I think someone said it. Ed Miliband said it. But I think Keir Starmer alluded to it as well. If he found out who did it, he would sack him. So then he says it didn't come from number 10. How do you know? How do you know? Unless you know who did it. No one's been sacked. It's come from number 10. He knows it's come from number 10. He knows where it's come from in number 10. And he ain't going to do anything about it. So I go back to my first point. If I were a Labour MP right now, I would be saying to him, Morgan McSweeney, I'm going to do everything in my power to get rid of Morgan McSweeney. If you shackle yourself to him, it's either you get rid of him or I'll get rid of you. And my letter would be going in really quite quickly. But it is what it is. When Marjorie Taylor Greene starts sounding normal, well, I wouldn't go too far. She's still talking about abandoning Ukraine. She doesn't want Ukraine being supplied or anything. But when she sounds more strategic than Donald Trump, the world is upside down. Never thought she would ever sound sane. No, it's just self-interest. She doesn't give a shit about people's healthcare. She doesn't give a... shit about the Epstein files. She just knows that her voters do. It's pure self-interest. He should not have said it did not come from number 10. No, he shouldn't have done. You know, I don't think that has specifically made it worse. What it's done is it's a message to Labour MPs that he's not going to do anything about it. It's a message to Labour MPs that the people in number 10 who are the problem, they are the problem. He is basically telling Labour MPs they've got a charmed life, that they can do no wrong. That's a terrible message to be sending out. But anyway, it is what it is. Last couple of comments, then we'll try and go there. Starmer has till the May elections. Any candidates will want him to take the fall for losing Wales? No. I did mention earlier, I mean, you can have your opinion, but I think it's the other way around. If they can replace Starmer sooner rather than later, a good communicator can give Labour a bounce. Because they're doing a lot of good stuff. All it takes is for the new Labour leaders to say, oh, look at all this stuff we're doing, right? Send a battle bus out, right? So you could do, and you could send it around, you know, the places you need to campaign for in those elections. Well, this is what we're doing, right? Admittedly, won't do as well in Wales and Scotland because devolution, right? So a lot of that stuff, a lot of the stuff they've been doing is for England, not all of it. So no, but the other problem is, if you wait till then you're letting Andy Burnham come in. I'll tell you what's the tricky thing, right? If you are Wes Streeting or Shabana Mahmood or Angela Rayner, because probably all three of those would put the hat. We don't know about Ed Miliband, but probably those three would. If you're one of those three, right, here's your conundrum. Here's your dilemma. I'll send you away with this dilemma for you, right? If you wait until after the May elections, you're going to have to contend with Andy Burnham and he'll probably be favourite, right? He might not be, but he'll probably be favourite. He's certainly an extra strong challenger you can do without. If you wait until May, that's your problem. So you need to get rid of Starmer quickly. If you're going to do it, get rid of him now, right? Problem, who triggers his downfall? Because whoever triggers his downfall is the assassin who will then look bad for destabilising the party. So each of those three people, Streeting, Mahmood, Rayner, they don't want to be the ones to bring Starmer down. But I'm not saying any of them want to bring or want Starmer brought down at all. Maybe all three of them are quite happy for Starmer to carry on. I don't know. What I'm saying is, if they think there's going to be a leadership contest anyway in the next year, they'd rather it be before the elections next year to ward off Andy Burnham, right? And that being the case, they want Starmer brought down, but they don't want their fingerprints on the knife sticking out of his back. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's like the one who wields the sword shall never wear the crown, which is bollocks, by the way, because they're always wielding the crown. Boris Johnson did, Rishi Sunak did, right? But in Labour, it's a bit different. Labour, they've never actually really sacked a Labour Prime Minister before. Labour don't really do regicides. They're quite loyal to their leaders. They tend to let their leaders go on their own terms. So it would be a really big thing if they get rid of it. Would literally make Starmer the least respected Labour leader ever, really, you could argue. Certainly Prime Minister. It would be a horrendous legacy for him. And so stupid, because he has actually won an election. He's given the biggest boost to workers' rights in my life. Huge boost to renters' rights. He's done a lot of good stuff. But he won't boast about it. That's his problem. He won't boast about it, and he's surrounded by idiots, and he won't get rid of the idiots. But anyway, I can't understand why anyone would want the poison chalice of the PM position, because anyone who would make a good leader has confidence in themselves. They have confidence that they will be able to do it. Liz Truss had confidence, right? It was very misplaced. All of these people have confidence. Some of them, that confidence will be misplaced. But they have it. That's why. They think they can turn it around. Because at the end of the day, politics is ultimately about persuading people. All you have to do is get the right words. With the right words, you can win the next election. All you need is the right words. Every single one of those people pictured thinks they can use the right words. Maybe not Ed Miliband, because as I say, he's the only one there without a huge ego. But the rest have all got, to some extent or others, egos. Burnham's the worst. My view is Starmer's a weak leader with no backbone, but he has plenty of backbone. He's been very, very ruthless, sometimes excessively so. He's done incredibly bold things, and they've backfired. He's done things that have been really unpopular, thinking it'll work out all right in the end. I would say he has got backbone. What he hasn't got is an exit strategy from his advisors. I think that's the problem. He probably just thinks to himself, I don't know who to replace them with. So he just thinks that's it. He's shackled to McSweeney, and that's all there is to it, possibly. Battle bus slogan for Scottish elections. No. It says he's alienated his entire base. Starmer doesn't have a base. He doesn't have one. That's another problem he's got. He doesn't have a faction within politics, which is a good thing because it means he's not tied. He hasn't got a faction saying, do this, do this. Well, he has Blue Labour, but it's not because he's tied to them. It's because he was persuaded that it's strategically sensible to listen to the idiots. But he hasn't got a faction. And the problem then is when you're vulnerable, you haven't got a natural support base. Because here's the thing, Labour, you may have noticed, is very factional, right? It's very tribal. And whenever there's a leadership contest in the offing, we're talking about it as if it's between these people. It's not between these people. It's between various tribes, right? Different tribes want to... It's quite funny. This week I've been watching a few documentaries on Sumer, right? The first human civilization. Similar thing there. Various cities, Sumerian cities, right? And they all seem to take it in turns being the main city, right? The ruling city. And it's the same thing in Labour. You've got all these little tribes, right? And when a leader's chosen, they just bide their time until they have the losing tribes bide their time until they have another shot at it. So Starmer doesn't have a tribe to rally around him, because that's the problem, you see. When the leader's vulnerable, the tribe that they belong to thinks, shit, another tribe may emerge if we lose here. So they rally around. Starmer hasn't got anyone to rally around him, which is why he cannot afford to be making these mistakes. That's actually the reason why I think he probably is sunk at this point. Not because, I think they're going to get rid of him any day now. I really have no idea. It's because he doesn't have a natural support base. It doesn't exist. He's a complete outsider. But anyway, we'll have to leave it there. We've gone on far too long. All very exciting. We'll wait and see if anything actually happens. Thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.